In 1932, in a quiet rural stretch of Alabama known as Macon County, hundreds of black men believed the United States government had come to help them. The Great Depression had crushed what little stability they had. Most were poor sharecroppers. Many had never seen a doctor in their lives. Medical care was something distant, something for people with money, something not meant for them. So when officials from the US Public Health Service arrived offering free treatment, free examinations, free meals, and even burial insurance, it sounded like a miracle. They were told they were being treated for what locals called bad blood, a vague phrase that could mean almost anything: fatigue, anemia, infection, weakness. It was a term familiar in the community, and that familiarity made it believable. They signed up willingly. They trusted the men in suits and white coats. They trusted the government seal on the documents. They trusted the promise of care. What they did not know was that from the very beginning, the study had nothing to do with helping them. It was designed to watch them die. The official title of the project was the Tuskegee Study of Untreated Syphilis in the Negro Male. Even the wording revealed the intent: untreated, not cured, not managed, observed. 600 men were recruited. 399 of them had syphilis. 201 did not and were used as a comparison group. Not one of the infected men was told he had syphilis. They were told they had bad blood. They were promised treatment. They were given none. At the time the study began, there was no reliable cure for syphilis. The disease progressed slowly and painfully through stages. It damaged organs, attacked the nervous system, caused blindness, paralysis, insanity, and eventually death. Researchers believed observing this progression could provide valuable scientific data. In their minds, this was an opportunity. In reality, it was the beginning of one of the darkest ethical violations in medical history. Every few months, the men were brought in for examinations. Blood tests were taken, their symptoms were recorded. Doctors wrote detailed notes as the disease quietly advanced inside their bodies. One of the most painful procedures they endured was the spinal tap, used to determine how far the disease had reached into the nervous system. The doctors told them it was special treatment. The men endured the pain because they believed it was helping them. They were, in fact, being measured. Then, in the 1940s, everything changed. Penicillin was discovered. By 1947, penicillin became the standard, widely available cure for syphilis across the United States and much of the world. Clinics began treating patients quickly and effectively. A once devastating disease could now be stopped in its tracks with a simple course of antibiotics, but the men in Tuskegee were never told. Doctors made a decision. They would continue the study. The experiment shifted from observing a disease without a cure to observing what happens when you deliberately withhold the cure. The men were denied penicillin. Local doctors were told not to treat them. Even when some of the men were drafted into the military during World War II and flagged for treatment, the Public Health Service intervened to keep them from receiving it. These men were not allowed to get better. They were valuable because they were sick. Years turned into decades. The men aged. Their bodies weakened. Some went blind. Some lost their mental faculties. Some suffered strokes. Some died in agony. Their wives became infected. Their children were born with congenital syphilis. And still, the study continued. Researchers wrote papers. Medical journals published findings. Careers were built on the data collected from men who thought they were patients, not subjects. By the 1960s, a few people inside the system began to question what was happening. A public health worker named Peter Buxton saw the files and felt a deep unease. He argued internally that the study was unethical and racist. His concerns were dismissed, so he went outside the system. In 1972, he leaked the story to a journalist. When the Washington Star and the New York Times published the truth, the public reaction was immediate shock and anger. For 40 years, the United States government had knowingly allowed hundreds of black men to suffer and die for the sake of observation. The study was shut down within days. By then, it was too late. At least 128 men had died directly from syphilis or its complications. Dozens of wives had been infected. At least 19 children were born with the disease. The survivors sued the government. In 1974, A settlement of $10 million was reached and lifetime medical benefits were promised. But no amount of money could erase what had happened. In 1997, more than 60 years after the study began, President Bill Clinton formally apologized to the remaining survivors and their families. He acknowledged the betrayal and the moral failure, but the damage was generational. The Tuskegee experiment shattered trust in the medical system for countless black families across America. Stories of Tuskegee were passed down like warnings. Do not trust hospitals. Do not trust doctors. Do not trust experiments. That mistrust still echoes today in conversations about healthcare, vaccines, and medical research. This was not the act of one evil person. This was a system. Doctors knew, officials knew, researchers knew, and they continued. The most disturbing part is not just the suffering, it is how easily it was rationalized. These men were not seen as fathers, husbands, sons, or human beings. They were seen as data, and for 40 years, no one with the power to stop it chose to. Sometimes, history hides its darkest chapters, not because they were secret, but because they were official, documented, funded, approved, published. The Tuskegee Syphilis Experiment forces an uncomfortable truth into the light. Harm does not always come from monsters. Sometimes it comes from institutions. Sometimes it comes wearing a white coat. Sometimes it comes with a smile and the promise of help. If this story revealed a chapter of history that should never be forgotten, like this video, subscribe to Stories Buried in Time, share it with others, and leave a comment with your thoughts. Because history is not only what we celebrate, it is also what we must remember, so it never happens again.